Hello, hello. Welcome back to That Mill podcast. A little different show today. We're going to be covering yesterday's 2-1 victory, or Monday night's 2-1 victory after extra time against Sheffield United, which saw Mill crowned as PDL Champions, Professional Development League. My name's Omer. Joining me today, I've got Mr. Joe Zampa. Hello, guys. You all right?
Hi, Omer. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, it's a bit foreign, this, leading the reins on my own show that I've not done for a little while. So
I know. It's
a
been a
little
while,
while.
isn't it?
It has,
Been
it
a
has. But
while.
I really look forward to this little chat, mate, because obviously a great win for us yesterday, wasn't it? A 2-1 victory after extra time. A lot of talking points, a lot of things we'll cover, I'm sure. And we'll get straight into that, I guess. Let's go straight into it, mate. I mean, 2-1 win. We're champions of the Professional Development League. Not bad.
That's what I was going to ask you actually, because I felt a little bit stupid yesterday. I posted a quick little video of them celebrating. I thought it was brilliant. And I put on there, oh yeah, fantastic. You know, we won the playoffs and we've been promoted, but technically we're not being promoted and we're not going anywhere. We're remaining in the league.
No.
So I'm hoping you, being a bit of a football guru, can explain to me and the listeners what is the Professional Development League final and what does it actually represent?
Okay, cool. I'll try. I do know the answer.
I know you do. That's why I'm asking you.
I'll dim it down as much. Well, not dim it down. I'll just explain it as simple terms as possible because it's very confusing and convoluted. If you look into like the youth setups for like English football in general, you've got something called the EPPP, which is the Elite Player Performance Plan, and basically that's split into categories. So Mill's a Category 2 football youth academy, and Cat
Right.
1 is the Premier League notoriously, and all their like big clubs. You pay a fee to be this certain club, like standard sort of thing for youth level, and then you have certain facilities to back it up and fit the criteria. So we are. I think at the time it was a big deal because it was when we was in League One, and we pushed to be Category 2, which was like, oh, Mill's kind of giving us a little
I
go, and
remember
you
that.
could maybe argue we're reaping rewards from that now, so to speak, but. Basically, this is our ceiling because we're not Category 1, and Category 1 is like the Premier League 2 version. So if you look at the
I
Premier League
see.
clubs, they've got the PL2, and then this is what we're in, which is the PDL Professional Development League, which is the
Ah,
best of the rest, so to speak, after the Premier League.
that
So
makes sense, doesn't it? Then it makes absolute sense because I was thinking I couldn't quite get my head around that. I couldn't quite understand how that would work. You know, because I'm thinking, well, surely if they're that good, next season we're up with the likes of the Man City Academy, Liverpool
sure,
Academy, maybe like, but it's not quite. It's not the case. And
yeah,
so that does that matter? So the category is a big part. No matter how good our team may be, even if our team were good enough to beat, Chelsea's academy, which I don't think they will do, but if they did, the fact that we're Category 2, it doesn't allow us to play with these sort of teams. Is it?
especially at 21s level. Yeah, I think under 18s obviously got the FA Youth Cup and stuff, and then I don't know the structure too much of that, but I know for 21s, which used to be the 23s, you've
Yeah.
got the Category 1 teams in the Premier League 2, it's called. And that's where like you see like you're allowed to play 3 or 4 under 23 players or under 21 players and stuff like that. And that's obviously the level we were talking about yesterday as well. And that's why we play Sheffield United, because we won the regional playoff last week, which made us the champions of the Southern Division. And
Yeah.
then Sheffield United won the Northern part against, I think, Hull maybe last week, or I can't remember who they played. But basically,
See.
then the two teams play each other afterwards to decide who's the best team. And obviously, we won it at
Wow.
home and we got the result, didn't we? So,
Brilliant.
yeah, I
Excellent.
mean,
And the reason we got the home tie over them, do you know what the
I
reason
think it
was?
was a coin toss. I'm guessing on that one. I
Okay.
think it might have been. I mean, it might have just been a simple fact of a coin toss. I think
Right.
one of the guys yesterday was saying, "Oh, what if it was a neutral venue like Milton Keynes or something?" But I went, "Well, if it's like Milton Keynes, you won't have many Sheffield United fans there, and you won't have many Mill fans there
We
either."
might have a few, but yeah, not many.
No, we'll talk about the atmosphere and stuff, I think, because I think that's worthy of mention. But, I think without that, it was a great experience for the players, wasn't it, really, I suppose you could say.
100%. I mean, I thought there'd be a good few hundred there, and it turned out to be about 2,000, weren't there? Because the whole, Kitchener stand at the top there was almost full, wasn't it? Pretty much, and it was really nice. I felt, it was great for the youngsters, to have that kind of support, that kind of following. It kind of gives them a little bit of a taste as well as what may come, if they were to get into the first team and how they would kind of play to that type of crowd. Obviously, the crowds will be bigger when you're playing for the first team, but I thought they responded well. I thought a few of them connected really well with the fans as well. You see a few of them kind of like doing the old fist pump and try and get the fans sort of going, which I thought was really, really nice. They obviously get it. They understand how important the fans are in how they play and what they do. But no, I think it was a really, really good atmosphere. I was pleasantly surprised. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest with you.
Definitely. I think the first telltale sign for me was even getting to the ground, and I drove down thinking, oh, maybe I might be able to get a cheeky spot in the Zampa car park. I was a little bit late, and then literally they said straight away, "Oh no, you can't park here," and the steward's working on the gate, and it's like, oh, it's quite a pleasant surprise because like everyone was there in their numbers, weren't they? Even from the get go, you thought this is a big
I
occasion
know.
than you probably thought it would be, I suppose.
I must have got there about 10 minutes before you did then, because when I got there, literally, I think I was just getting the last few cars in. I had to park up on a grass verge somewhere. I thought, what the fuck is going on here? Like, there's too many cars, too many people. Like, have I kind of like, have I been in a coma or something? Is it now the start of the season? Is it a pre-season game? It did seem like that, didn't it? Like, there was a lot going on.
Definitely, and then there was queues to get tickets and stuff, and it was like, obviously, as in general, it was great. Obviously, atmosphere and stuff, and that showed through. I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the game. We obviously have quite limited knowledge in the sense of the 21s before yesterday. It's the first time I've seen them play this season. Seen a few of them feature in the first team, and a couple of them playing pre-season, start of the season, just gone. But we'll go through the team. We had Wright in goal, Joe Wright, and then right back was Walker. Left back was Adam Malachi. Centre halves was Smith and Okoli. Then you had Lawson in central midfield of Alfie Allen. And then you had Amaku, Abdul Malik, Eze, and Boateng as kind of a four up front. That kind of interchanged at times, I felt, didn't it? I mean, we'll talk about the game in general, but it felt like a kind of a 4-2-3-1, didn't it? Which was, I guess, similar to what the first team were playing towards the end of the season, and that continuity, I suppose.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, in the old days, what you quite often happened when you had a reserve team and a first team, quite often the reserve team will replicate how the first team would play. So the manager would have a formation, and then they will want the reserve team to play in a very similar sort of way. I guess it makes sense for the youngsters coming through to adapt to a very similar style. If we're playing with 3 at the back or 5 at the back, I'm sure they would be having a system that would obviously be very similar to that in a sense that if they're called upon to play for the first team, they know the system, they can break straight into it and almost kind of fall in. But that was it. It was I thought it was a quite nice balance to the side. I thought defense looked strong. I mean, we could talk about the players a little bit later individually, but I just thought collectively, I think the defense looked strong. They looked organized. The midfield looked good. There was a bit of pace as well. I thought, in the attacking 3 midfielders and Macu up front, who's obviously the young Irish lad we signed last season, who I thought, done quite well. He sort of run the line quite well up front there. I thought he held himself quite well, did a decent job until obviously he hobbled off near the end, of course,
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I agree with you on the structure. I thought, as the game played out, especially the early stages, we had quite a dominant spell in the game, I feel like, the first half hour or so. And came out the blocks really flying. I guess the atmosphere played a part. Loads of Millwall fans there. I don't know the official numbers for Sheffield United, but there weren't many Sheffield United fans there, it felt like, and next to none.
Pretty
I guess
family and friends, maybe. I'm guessing a few might travel down for it. Not many, but they did cheer. Obviously, you heard the cheer when they scored, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it must have been about 50 of them, maybe. There's certainly a lot of hands raised, weren't there? You can see it from the distance, from the side. They're kind of over the far end.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, and I think, like I said, like the first half hour was all Millwall. Really, it felt like I didn't feel like there was too many opportunities for Sheffield United, and we got our goal, didn't we, through Eze, which was a good build up to the goal, I think, Joe, as well. I mean, I've not seen it back, but to my knowledge, it was Shamar Lawson, number 4, who picked the ball up in midfield, travelled with it a bit from the D of like the halfway line, picked out Amaku, who done a little good control turns, little bit of a fake shot, and then the keeper parries it. Probably should have done better, the keeper. It wasn't the most difficult shots, maybe you could say. And then Eze's there following him, which was a good finish. Obviously, he was there to finish it. And it was interesting after the game, his interview, where he said he learned that from the first team, where they said to me, make sure you follow up on all your shots, all the shots into the box and stuff. And there's the experience of playing the first team already benefiting a player like Eze, who, for me anyway, in the first half was a real standout for us and clearly above the rest, it felt like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I heard that bit as well, and I thought that was great. That you're obviously thinking about that. He's thinking about his game, he's thinking where he can improve, and he's trying to get into those areas, which is great, and it paid off for him. I mean, going back to the start of the build-up was great. I thought the young lad Lawson, is it Jamal Lawson? You say his name was? He was one of the standout players for me.
Jamal Lawson. He was actually on loan to Maidstone United for most of the second half of the season, and they got relegated. Maidstone United, they got relegated from the conference, but he played a couple of goals as well. I saw on his Instagram, but I think he's allowed to play because it was a youth loan, so like he was on loan but could still play for the 21s and featured. But he was on loan at Maidstone, and I think you could see that early doors. I thought with his physicality, and he looks a bit more.
he was very athletic, wasn't he? Like, he was very quick at the tackles. He read the situation very well. He got around the pitch really, really well. There's a lot of tired legs towards the end of the game. A lot of players were going down with cramp. And again, about the amount of running he did, I don't think he went down once. He seemed very, very strong. I quite liked him. I'd love to see him feature next season a little bit if he gets an opportunity to be on the bench and come on maybe at the end. But no, great work from him to find a Maku, like you say. And Maku does some great work there, sort of trickery to sort of drop the shoulder, get onto his favoured, I think it's his favoured left foot. And you're right, SA sort of did what he had to do and kind of get into that area and put it away. So it's a good goal. Good. And deservedly so. I think we deserved that 1-0 start, you know. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, here we go, 2-0, 3-0, but it wasn't quite to happen, was it?
No, I think they're notoriously end to end from when I've seen like reserve games or 21s in the past. I've not seen them a lot this season, but you're right to point up, obviously, like say about the style of play, but it's also a lot of neat passing and build up play and stuff, which we don't normally see, at least from our side, a lot in the Championship. But I think you can see like it's one of those games where like it's kind of peaks and troughs because the team will come out and dominate the first 20-30. Then afterwards, Sheffield United should have and probably could have made it 1-1 before half time. They hit the crossbar, didn't they? I think the number 11 done a bit of trickery skill and almost scored to make it 1-1. Joe Wright made a couple good saves from set pieces and stuff like that to keep us kind of into the game at 1-0 really at half time. And I think it's that sort of game, isn't it, where like they will kind of be peaks and troughs where they're not there for the full 90 minutes, I guess, the young players potentially. Yeah,
I mean, Pop was wondering because I heard that I didn't see him, but I heard Gary Rowett was there yesterday, and he came down to watch the boys. And I think a couple of players were there, Zian Fleming being one of them, which is quite good for him to sort of turn out. I mean, you expect Rowett to be there if he's available to be there, because you know you got to look at your young stars coming through. You've got to look at them in a in a quite high intensity game and an important match, see how they kind of deal with it, the situation, and whether or not they've got the attributes and the characteristics to potentially get into the first team. So I'm sure he'll been quite pleased with what he saw there and the character of the players. But part of me was thinking, did he go down there at half time and have a word with them? Because they came out very Rowett, didn't they, the second half?
Yeah.
You know, they were quite defensive and they did sit back quite a little bit, inviting the pressure on. And you think, hang a minute, the first half, you were a joy to watch. You know, it was attacking, free-flowing football. I was loving it. I thought, geez, I haven't seen this all season. You know, and they looked really good. But then, like you said, I think after sort of half hour, they did kind of drop deep a little bit. I noticed a couple of times when the players were going forward, like SA was, and a couple of others, and you just saw Kevin Nugent there sort of stop and sort of like do the signal to like to calm down, like to sit back. So I don't see Nugent being a defensive-minded coach. I see him being quite attack-minded, and it shows from the goals that these guys have been scoring all season. But I do wonder, with the formation we talked about earlier, didn't we, about them having to play a formation very similar to the first team. Do you think maybe even tactically, Wright wants to play very similar to how he would normally play, as in get behind the ball, don't press, counter, that sort of thing?
Maybe, potentially. I think you can see elements of the team and the style, I suppose, but I suppose you've also got to work with what you've got, haven't you, in a sense where like you can't force them to do too much of one thing. Maybe it's to balance the team as well and try and get results. And it's clearly worked because we're the best in the division and best in the country at that tier. So, but yeah, I do agree with you a bit. I think one thing you notice, like, yeah, you're right. The shape looks the same and the team lines up similar, but I think the physicality isn't there in that sense as well, which is obviously a strong element of our team. You see at times players getting barged off the ball and stuff, and because they're youngsters, ain't they? And I think you do notice that in a sense, but it's a bit more slick and quicker, isn't it? I think you mentioned Abdul Malik, Boateng, who I thought was quite good in the first half.
Malik.
So quick.
Yeah,
them, definitely. And then I think you throw Eze into the mix as well, and then Maku. I think it's just literally a case of like give the four of them the ball and ask them to do something magic with it and run the channels and run behind, and it worked in the early stages anyway.
Obviously, it's unfair to criticise the kids because they're still young and they're still learning their trade and they're still developing, aren't they? I mean, I was a little bit disappointed with Maku, not in if he did wrong majorly, but I think for someone who's played in men's football in Ireland for the last 2 seasons, okay, he started there quite young, but he's playing competitive men's football for Shamrock Rovers when he last season, and I was quite surprised how easy he went down. It was a couple of tackles or a couple of headers he didn't win. He went down like he'd been shot a couple of times. I'm sort of watching him thinking, fuck me, you're going to get like chewed up in the Championship, especially with these big defenders. he'll do it once, and they'll sniff the blood, and they'll go at him. So again, I think it's all about learning. You can see probably why Rowett is a bit reluctant to kind of put these youngsters in just yet, and he's trying to bleed them in quite slowly, because there's one thing being good enough, but you've got to be right mentally. You've got to be able to sort of do the off the ball stuff as well, which again, looking at Abdul Malik, great talent. I mean, Jesus, he was so quick. But then I was trying to criticise him, but I will now very, very briefly just saying that off the ball, I don't think he was that great.
No.
And you can see why someone like Rowett would look at him and think, you know what, talented kid on the ball, brilliant, looks dangerous, very fast, but off the ball, sometimes he was looking over there. Yeah, the ball was going past. He wasn't paying attention. He wasn't in the right position. Or wasn't doing the right things. So they've got a lot to learn, haven't they? These youngsters, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the best way of doing it is, I suppose, with Esse. You know, we're calling for Esse to play last year towards the end of the season, and you know, give him a game, start him. But you know, Rowett's reluctance was based on the fact there is that kind of element of defensively they'll track back and you know lose their man, and they're critical moments, I suppose, as the season draws to an end. So it's the balance act, isn't it? I think you know he's obviously got the trust from the board and the club in general, right? But I think you know unless the board are putting direct pressure on him to play the players. Would you want to risk losing your job if youngsters concede silly goals and you know we have mistakes and stuff? It's the general pressures, isn't it? Because I think Harris used to say when he was manager, I can't remember. Obviously, League One, you had Fred playing, you had Ben Thompson, O'Brien, all these players coming in. Sid Nelson getting game. As soon as you go up to the Championship, it's like the more money there, you know, players are invested in and stuff.
Bigger risks, yeah.
It's like if you can balance it, going well, I can throw a few young players in League One, but in the Championship, can you get away with it? And you know, ultimately, if you lose 10 games on the spin or if you don't get results, you might ultimately lose your job if you're at a club that is trigger happy, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. And, you know, I, for one, was pushing for Esse to start a lot of games last season. You know, I want to see these youngsters coming through. But watching them yesterday, you can almost half understand the reluctance, like I said, for Rowett not to start them. And maybe that's why he's been a bit sort of clever and trying to kind of bleed them in the way he has been, because yeah, I think there's a big gulf there. And I think I mentioned before, we watched a training game once. This was maybe, when was the international break when Bradshaw got called up for Wales?
March
time, yeah. So it wasn't too long ago, a couple of months ago. And the first team played that team pretty much, the under-21s. We had no Bradshaw. There was no Saville, because I think he was with Northern Ireland, and Cresswell was away with England. So there's a few players missing. Vogsam was up front, for example. You know, so it was kind of a little bit of a sort of reduced sort of squad. But it was a 15, 20-minute game, and the men's first team just passed the ball around the under-21s. I think they got about 10% possession, and Vogsam was scored the goal, the 1-1-0 in this sort of training game. So you can see there, like, the levels, you know, and the physicality, like you say, is so important. I think you're playing the Championship in particular, that, you know, as great as these youngsters were yesterday and how good they were on the eyes, let's not get carried away too yet. Let's not, you know, push these boys in. But I must say, there are one or two really standout performers yesterday, weren't there? And I would love to see feature quite heavily for next season. Who would you go for? Who would you pick out as your most impressed players?
I'm twisted between a couple. I'm going to say I'd love to see. I really like Smith, the centre half, the number 5. He's shorter but he seems to be really good on the ball.
He reads it well, doesn't he?
He does definitely reads it well, and I think the clear standout everyone might go for, and I've seen online go for, was Adon Malachi, the left back, who was just lightning quick, up and down the pitch. Had a gigantic throw in him, so he could take Fleming off the throw-ins as well. It's like, that is also a position you look at and go, well, left back, you know, I mean, he's not going to come in and be a well beater from day one of pre-season, but that is a position where you look at our side and think, oh, you know, that could be a void ready-made to be filled in a year or so's time.
Well, when you think about it, we've lost Malone now, so Malone's gone. We've got Murray Wallace as our only left back. Okay, arguably you could say Callum Stoles could play there if we were to re-sign him. We don't know what's going to happen next season yet, do we, of course? But when I looked at him yesterday, the guy looked sound defensively, assured defensively, knew what he was doing, positioning was great. He looked calm. He was good in the air. He had a good leap on him for a very short guy.
He was
I don't know whether
committed
his
as well.
hairstyle,
A couple of times he goes into it, very committed as well.
I don't know whether his hairstyle might have helped him a little bit. He had a few extra inches on top of his head there, didn't he? But and then going forward, it was the composure, it was the dribbling, it was the the fact that he didn't mind taking a few touches and rolling the ball a few times and beating a defender and going to the byline and getting his crosses. His delivery was so good. I mean, he set up the goal for a Coley, I think, didn't he? At the end, it was his free kick.
Yeah.
So he's got a decent left foot. He can deliver the ball. He can pass. He looked good, And I mentioned earlier about not bleeding these players in too soon, but I think there's one or two of them I think can do a decent job for us. And then I think they only get better and better with minutes. And someone like him in the back four, alongside a Cooper and whoever is going to be there, will give him a little bit of a mentoring, if you like. I think he'll do a fantastic job, and I think he'll give us what we need. And again, I mentioned earlier about players dropping like flies sometimes, with cramp and all that. I don't think he went down once. His legs looked like tree trunks. He was built. He was strong. He was a strong kid. He looked good. He's strong. He's fast. He's physical. I really liked him, and I agree with you. I think that was it's definitely one that I would have looked to take on if I could.
Yeah, I think he was the clear standout. Like I said, first half I was really impressed with Shamar Lawson. I think you saw the physicality of his game, and he was a bit of an engine up and down, up and down. He lost it a bit in the second half, but I think that's because we was without the ball a lot, and we didn't touch the second half. Obviously, Sheffield United were kind of more dominant side, and it's fair to say. Maku had that chance we've not spoken about yet. If to make it 2-0,
he actually tweeted that. He tweeted that last night, didn't he?
Did he?
I think Akoli put something on there. I think Akoli retweeted something about his goal. Yeah. And then Matthew said something along the lines of "Thank God for that, because you got me out of shit." And he put a laughing emoji. So I think even he realised himself, although I think it was ruled out offside anyway, but he basically fucked up, didn't he? Hit the post.
I don't think it was ruled offside. Was it? If it was, I missed it. I think
his flag went up. I think it was. Yeah. Whether it was.
You sure he didn't just give a goal kick?
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was, because I remember thinking at the time, you know what? You're lucky that was offside, because obviously that would have been really, really bad,
Okay, interesting. I mean,
that one.
Yeah, it was Nana great build up, wasn't it? Nana Boateng down the left, squares it, and then Maku's like all the time in the world, all the space in the world, takes the left foot and just smashes it against the post. Like, shit.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shame. Like I said, I'd like to have seen him sort of bury that one. I mean, he probably would have been ruled offside anyway, but I guess that's what you want, though. You want these youngsters to sort of play with no fear, do you? I mean, the fact he's making a joke of it afterwards with a Coley on Twitter shows me that he's obviously not too hung up over it. But you're right. I think chances like that, he's got to bury and put away. I mean, can you imagine him playing a Championship League game for Millwall? It's 1-1 with like 2 minutes left of the game. Yeah. You have a chance like that, and you hit the posts, would they be forgiving the fans,
We'll agree to disagree, because it does say on the Millwall Academy Twitter, that was 20 minute by minute. Incredible. Nana Boateng beats his man and crosses to an unmarked Maku, but the Irishman smacks his close range shot against the post, and it rolls along the line and it's cleared. So it doesn't mention offside. So I mean,
okay.
So it could potentially have been offside, or
I mean, the referee was a bit useless, weren't he? To be fair, I mean, I did see the line would definitely put his flag up. Whether the referee saw it or not, I can't remember what happened after that. But I remember the flag did go up, because I think we all looked over, and I remember saying, the first thing I said was, "Oh, he's lucky that was offside," because that was embarrassing,
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, so that was 55th minute on a minute by minute, and then 10 minutes later, Peck scores a tap in from a.
He was a good player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a really good player.
What do you make of him? He was a captain, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, he was. I think he's a solid winger, I think, as well, wasn't he? I thought he was quite decent for them. I think it was the player that number 11 that done the build up, that hit the post in the first half, that had also the chance that kind of done a curling shot. And from where we were sitting, I think he was similar.
Brook, his name wasn't it? Andre Brook. He was quality.
Yeah, and I think it was a curling effort, top right, and it was going top right corner, hits the post, comes back, and then Peck's there to tap in to make it 1-1. And I mean, we talk about ebbs and flows of the game, Joe, but obviously the rest of that half, it felt like it was only Sheffield United probably win the game, to be honest. It was kind of hanging on a bit. Not many chances. Like you said, last 15 minutes, players start to go down with cramp, which was quite interesting to see. I mean, I guess it maybe it's the intensity of the game, but also the profile of the game, maybe. It's just mentally and also physically affecting the players potentially and bringing the cramp on and stuff. But it did feel like it was hanging on a little bit towards the end of the 90 minutes.
I think both teams were sort of struggling. It wasn't just us, was it? I think even their players were going down with cramp and injuries, and we both seem to have it, an issue. Whether it's just their age, maybe they're not quite developed yet. This is what I said earlier. Yeah, they're not quite at the men's level yet, are they? And with the physicality of it, it's probably quite a lot for them.
Yeah.
Could it be the Millwall pitch? Brad mentioned before about the pitch being a little bit too hard, too soft. Maybe too hard. That might have given a little bit of problems for them. But no, physically, I think it was tough for them, and they did really well to kind of see it out. But it was like backs against the wall a little bit. Like you say, Omar, I think the second half in particular, I do feel that Sheffield United came on. They looked the better team. They played very, very sort of wide. They were knocking that ball around. They were kind of hitting diagonal passes and trying to switch the play. And then we started looking like the real Millwall team, didn't we? The men's team. We sort of sat back, defensive. You kind of shouting them to get out. But again, is this all part of the tactics? Is this like that? Wright likes, and that's what Nugent's trying to get them to do as well, to kind of soak up the pressure. And who knows? But yeah, it was quite difficult to watch. And I think again, honourable mention there for Joe Wright. I thought he was fantastic. And definitely. A few times he saved us, didn't he? He made some crucial saves. I think his ball handling was great at times, when some shots were fired at him. He didn't kind of spill anything, I mean, could you see him, potentially rivaling George Long for number one spot if it's too early? I mean, I've seen youngsters 18 years old play for men's first team. I mean, why couldn't he do it?
Joe Wright's he's been around the fold for a little bit, Joe Wright. I'm trying to just find out his age, but I think he's 22 years old.
Was he really? That's interesting.
He's towards the end of the path, really. So a bit like Sanford in a sense, where he let Ryan Sanford go this summer. Joe Wright was always the year behind him. I think I remember seeing Wright play when he was 18, like at a pre-season game at Bromley, like a Mill 11s game and stuff. And it's like he's always looks a solid goalkeeper, but it's like you're wondering the same thing with Sanford, I suppose. Of are you really going to develop and be that top player? And I think that's why also like they signed that Connell Truman last year, because I remember we bumped into Andy Marshall on the way home from QPR on the tube. It was him, Fleming, and a couple of others on the tube. And is that where that clip goes around of Fleming and Creswell on the tube together? But Andy Marshall was on that tube too, and he was saying, we've signed Truman as well because then we're allowing all our youngsters to go out and play football. Because I think for a goalkeeper more than any position, it's like development games, but you need to play men's football, get kind of elbowed in the face at set pieces, and really bulk up in a sense. And I don't know. I think he went on loan to Bath, didn't he, last year, Joe Wright? He looks a really good keeper. Some great saves. I completely agree with you, but it's a big step to go from Bath City to playing for Millwall in the Championship, isn't it? And it's do you need to make that roadmap? Maybe another loan from a higher level. I don't know how he really got on at Bath, but I agree with you. It was really, really good. Honourable mention to him. Kept us in the game. Some really like close range headers being saved and stuff, and set pieces where it comes in quick. He doesn't have a lot of time to think. And
good kicking. His kicking was good. I know he was left footed as well, like George Long, wasn't he? His kicking's some good. He got some distance on those as well, didn't he?
Definitely, I mean, it'd be interesting. I'm not too sure. I'm not convinced if he's ready to do that jump. And like I said, he's 22, but we'll have to wait and see. I think I also wanted to give, before we move on to more players, I suppose, or maybe who could come into the team. But I don't know if you noticed the sub in the second half, Frankie Vid or Hidft.
Is he the local lad, number 12 that came on?
So number 12 is
Frankie Vid.
Frankie Vid or Hid. His name is HVID, and I have no idea how to pronounce that, but I'm gonna say Frankie Vid.
I quite liked him. I listened to a couple of fans behind me talking about him, and they're saying the local lad. He literally lives like 5 minutes away.
Born and raised Bermondsey, proper Millwall family. A few of his family were actually in the pub afterwards when we went to down the Blue Anchor afterwards. I think his brother came in and stuff, and he's a proper like local Mill family. Reminds me of Sid Nelson in a sense, where that kind of like youngster,
as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Black football boots, like no messing around, like proper like short sleeves, probably when it's snowing, I imagine.
The first he did, Omar, you noticed that he went for this massive tackle, didn't he? It was the ball he won. It's his first contribution, and he went boom straight into this tackle, and I thought, he's a Millwall boy, this one, isn't he? You know,
definitely. And I think I'm not mentioning him more so as a standout, but more so just a one to watch and see where he goes with it. Because I think he only joined us in January, February. He was at Bromley, came through their youth setup. We signed him for this season, quite late into the season. So maybe watch this space and see how he develops next season more so, I'm going to say. Because obviously you've got Okoli and Smith, who, again, we've not really mentioned Okoli, but he took his header goal really great. And
Really
you can
well,
tell he's a
yeah.
real captain, left-sided centre-half, a lot of like Jake Cooper, really. Big,
Vocal
strong,
as well, wasn't he? He's quite vocal,
vocal.
him shouting quite a bit.
So, like, I think maybe watch this space. If one of them go on loan and Frankie Vid gets his chance to play consistently next season, develop with the 21s, and because I think he's been a bit part really for most of the second half season. But watch him with pre-season, Millwall fan as well. Like I said, it could he be the one that we kind of hope to captain the side one day? You know, he's got Paul Robinson as his mentor. You know, what the other 21s coach, which I think needs to be
True.
mentioned as
Yeah.
well.
Excellent point.
So like maybe it's like watch his space a little bit. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think he certainly played with us with an almost a kind of point to prove. It's almost like, you know what, he was looking for this moment for all his life. You know, so he's playing at the Den with the fans watching. You can see what it meant to him. He had his little fan club up the top, didn't they? Shouting his name, you know, Frankie, what they were singing, you know, and he didn't want to disappoint them. You can see he was up for it. He was loving it. He was really enjoying it, and he played with a real kind of heart and determination, desire, which you expect from a Millwall boy. You mentioned Okoli there. I thought he was great. I mean, Okoli, I've noticed that he has trained with the men's first team a few times last season. So could Wright be looking at him as potentially this season stepping up? You know, we look at how light we are on defenders at the moment, especially with Cresswell leaving and Hutch getting a bit older now as well. Could he be in the fray for this season? I'm not saying he's going to start, but you never know. He might be able to step in at times when we need him to. Is he naturally a left-footed player, or was he a both-footed player? He is.
I think he's a left side centre half. He's built like Cooper, isn't he? He's absolute unit. He's quite tall as well. Yeah, so
he's got a bit more agility and a bit more speed and pace than Cooper has. Definitely. The only thing I feel a bit sorry for him is that Cooper, and you know, the guy, his stats sort of says it all. You know, he's had over 300 games for us, doesn't he, Cooper? He very rarely gets injured. You know, very rarely goes missing or suspended. And if you're a left-sided centre back, you're really hoping and praying that someone like Cooper gets injured or loses out for you to fit in. If you're a right-footed player, you can almost play on both sides. It's always difficult when you're a left-footed player to go into a team and play on the right side on your weaker foot, so to speak, you know? Yeah. So I think that's the only thing he's going to probably find a little bit difficult. But you never know. With a flat back four, Wright might put him at left back sometimes, just kind of give him a taste of it, see what it's like, you know? But, I think on that performance yesterday, captain's performance, scoring the winning goal, you know, driving the players around him. Like I said, he was very, very vocal, very organised, and what he was trying to do. And I thought he done again. That player done really well. Quite impressed with him.
He's only a second year pro as well. He's 19 years of age, so he's turned 20 in October. So again, he's played a time to develop. I think he went on loan to Torquay at the start of the season, played 2 or 3 games at the conference level. So I think you know it's nice about a roadmap, isn't it? You know, you've got Alex Mitchell coming back, haven't you, from St Johnston? Is that then allowing a chance for another player to go out on loan, or you know, I think it's quite like a conveyor belt at the minute, isn't it, Joe? Because the elephant in the room here is if we've got the best under 21s team in the country aside from the Premier League clubs, do these players need to get in the team? How are we going to go about this? How do we challenge that one?
Again, I would love to see them feature in and around the first team. My only concern is, you know, let's not have the blinkers on. It's a little bit of a smoke screen. Yes, they were fantastic. They were great. They were good in the eye. They look really good. But there's a massive jump to Championship football. And I think the listeners that listen to this at the moment are probably going to be disagreeing with me, thinking, no, they're good enough. Put them in. But believe me, you know, there is a massive jump there. And as much as we want them to do well, of course we want to get them involved with the first team. I think you mentioned yourself there, the players that have been out on loan last season, the likes, you know, at Bath, Torquay, these are lower division teams, you know, and they're kind of breaking into those teams. What I'd love to see is probably them go out on loan to a League One side, maybe like a Neil Harris at Gillingham or something, maybe, you know, get them in those kind of games, see how they cope in a division below. If they can deal with the physicality of it, if they can deal with the intensity and because they're tough divisions to play in. We've seen it with Millwall when we've been in there. It's very hard to get out of those leagues. If they can make it in that division, then I would say, right, let's test them at Championship level, because they're not all going to be lucky like SA is to kind of go straight into the first team or play as often as he has been, because like I said, there's a massive jump there, and I think you have to really kind of, you know, bleed your way slowly, and maybe League One is a good opportunity for them to sort of test them, see how they cope with it. If they can do it, right, let's push on to the next stage. But you're right, we are quite lucky and privileged to have so many good youngsters at the moment in and around that squad.
Definitely. I think that's why I'm a bit conflicted, because like you don't ignore the fact that we've obviously won the 18s league with the same age group a couple of years ago. They've now gone on to win the 21s league, and they're progressing really. And it's like, well, how do we get these into the first team? But then like you say about SA, like if they're good enough, Rowett is going to trust them to play. So this is ultimately the underlying tone of it. So you've got to trust his judgment, I think, on these players really ultimately, because he clearly thinks SA is good enough, he brought him in. He clearly thought McNamara and Mitchell were worthy of playing after their loan spells, and he's brought them in. And these are now prominent players in the side. So I think maybe there is that element of like, oh look how well they're doing. We all love the youth players. They love academy players coming through. So there's always that pressure, but I think, reality is like if they're good enough, Rowett will trust them to play and give them minutes to play. So I think you've got to have an element of trust in the manager really to pick his right side and who he thinks is worthy of playing, haven't you? But it's always but then like I said, the other side of me is like, but they're clearly the best of their age group. Like
I agree.
you know what I mean? It's such a, but you're right, and then I'm right too. It's like these are like they're going to conference and they're playing the conference, and one got relegated with one side, the other one went to Torquay and struggled. And it's like, like it's a learning curve for them. And it's back to the point from earlier. Can you learn in the Championship? How do you learn
absolutely.
your
To your point there, like when Tyler Bury went to Hartlepool, which I think they're in League 2, is that right?
Yeah.
He really stood out, didn't he? I mean, they loved him there when he was on loan there. He done fantastically well, and I think that's why we recalled him, didn't we? I think we needed him back, and we brought him back. Now he's a decent player, and he's shown that he can do it at Championship level. But when you star and you stand out so well in that division in League 2, that then tells you, right, let's move to League 1. Was the Championship too big a jump for him? Maybe. The trouble is, like you said, the players you mentioned there earlier, the likes of Bath, Torquay, and all that. If you're not absolutely bossing it at that level, then really, are you ready for the Championship football? You've got to be literally head and shoulders. A bit like old players that come to Millwall, like Harry Kane, Huckabee on loan. You look at these players coming, you think, Jesus, these guys are quality, and you can see that they should be playing levels above. And then obviously they get their chance in the Premiership, whatever, and they do really well. There's no surprise there. But I think we've got to be a little bit patient with a few of these. Test them in a division below. I wouldn't want to go any lower, because let's be honest, if you can't do it in League 1, you've got no chance to do it in the Championship. I don't see the point of going to League 2 or the Conference. So you've got to sort of get back to a League 1 team. And like I said, someone like Neil Harris will be the perfect manager for our boys to go out to. We could send a couple of them out on loan to Gillingham, where he's going to play them. He's going to develop them. He knows the Millwall way. He knows what we're about, what we expect from them as well. I think that would be a really, really good move for a couple of these boys, and I'd love to see that happen. One player I did like, who's been lost for a little while now, is that Nana Boateng.
Yeah.
Now, again, going back to the training game earlier this season, he was one of the players that really stood out. And I think in that game, we played Ryan Leonard at right back from memory. And he absolutely tore Ryan Leonard to pieces a couple of times. He got to the byline, went one way, went the other, trickery, and he put Ryan Leonard on his bum a couple of times. And I did think to myself, wow, that is good. You can see what he's got, and Abdul Malik, again, you can see what he's got on the ball. The trouble is, what do they do off the ball? And that's always going to be the question, And I think the reason why we're not getting opportunities to play as many of these youngsters in the first team, and it's going back to something you said earlier in the conversation tonight, Omar, is do we put them in a game when it's 1-1 or 0-0? We don't want to mess up and lose the game. But if you're winning comfortably, you're 3-0 up with 10 minutes left, great opportunity, or 50 minutes left, great opportunity to put the youngsters on, see what they can do. The trouble is, how often this season or last season have we been 3-0 up with 10, 50 minutes left of the clock? It hasn't happened, unfortunately, and we're not lucky enough. So given the fact that we don't seem to push on and score many goals, we're never going to be in a comfortable position to allow these youngsters to come in and do what they want, and don't track back or don't do the things or mess up, because we can't afford to concede a goal, because concede one goal, we could end up drawing or losing the game, couldn't we?
Margins are so slim, in the Championship as well, isn't it? It's like a big difference of the outcomes of games and stuff. And you're right, 100%. I agree with you. I think it's if it's one of those where it's like, like I said, if the manager thinks they're good enough, they'll play. But then maybe if the club want to see that, then there needs to be a bit of pressure from the club to do that, to route it and say, but also then to give them the time and the lenience of saying, maybe we'll lose some games through mistakes of these young players. But it's like, this is the conundrum, isn't it? And it's also like,
it's like
this is it. It's also the conundrum, like for other clubs out there. I think, like if you play your youngsters, where's it going to get you? But also, like if you're now Joe Wright, you're 21 years old or 22 years old, and you're like, what's happening now? Mill thinking, should we release him now? And then if you release him, he goes down the Football League, or it's because you get to that age now where it's like, well, if he's not in the first team yet, let's say with Sanford, but then Sanford's quite a big guy. If he fills out in a few years' time, is he going to be coming back up the Football League? A bit like Fred Onyedinma, for example, at of course at Luton, or you got Eze who we let go and now he's at Palace. It's this, but I think it highlights like you see these talented players, but it's like how many matches are going to make it, but also who's going to be the right one. It's a thankless task sometimes for a football club, I think, to pick that right one and go, we're releasing you. Declan Rice getting released from Chelsea, like it happens everywhere, doesn't it? And it highlights like the pressure, but also like the clubs are under pressure too in that sense, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, I think it's so tough, like you say. I think you've got so many talented youngsters coming through. Unfortunately, you're not going to bring every young player through. You've got to let some go, and it is a bit of a risk. And I wonder whether they look at everything, not just the player as in how well they played. They look into their personalities. Are they a bad egg in a team? You don't know, do you, what goes on? And what they're like. Some players, maybe the manager just don't take a shine to, just don't like them for whatever reason, don't want to give them an opportunity, and they've been a little bit selfish with it. Who knows? But I do think that a few of these guys do need to get a look and do need to get a chance. Yeah, they're not going to get in the first team, get them out on loan, because yes, they've done fantastic well this season and they're top of the league, like you say, and they're the best in the country. Fantastic. But where's the next step? Where's the next level now? You can't do what you did this season and go out again and just try and win the league again, because you're not pushing them. These players now need to be pushed. They need to be developed. They need to go up to the next level. What that means, get them to the first team or get them out on loan to a lower championship team or, a League One team. Test them. They need testing. And you can't just leave them sitting in the under-21s, because what's going to happen, like you say, is lots of as a Palace and, Fred and all the others, they end up leaving and they'll probably come back to bite us in the bum one day. We think, you know what, that's an opportunity we missed out on, haven't we?
Absolutely. The old age conundrum. I think it's like if you're good enough. It also famous saying from Alan Hansen on Match of the Day: "You'll never win anything with kids." But if you sometimes it's like I said, I think this is what I always come back to. It's like, what is the directive, or how are Mill feasibly going to get up there? But then we're still up. We're in there and in the mix a lot, but do we need to create our own players? Do we need to suddenly just put 5 young players in? Is that a worthwhile strategy? It's such a balancing act, and short-term pain, but long-term gain. Can we make our own assets and start to make that the money belt to then invest in other players from abroad? Or it's always that question of how do you go about it? And you're never going to please everyone, I suppose, with that directive, but it needs to be some sort of. Hopefully the club have got the clear strategy in their head of what they want to do, I suppose, Joe.
Yeah. I think looking at the players yesterday, and I'm looking at them thinking, would I take a chance of a couple of these youngsters playing, or would I stick with the likes of George Evans and Volkshammer in our team? And I think I'd much rather see us lose a few games and win a few games and kind of miss out on promotion next season if we're experimenting and bleeding a few of these youngsters in. Look at Arsenal. I know we joked around, but look at Arsenal as an example of this. Okay, they're levels above us, but when you looked at the likes of Smith Rowe, Saka, Martinelli, Nketiah up front, these youngsters weren't exactly Premiership world beaters, were they? When they first started playing the first two, they looked okay, looked like they had potential, and they weren't doing brilliantly well. They were losing games, weren't doing fantastic. They're trying to find their feet a little bit. But with the experience, with the development, and with the faith showing these players, they've become really, really big players now. Saka looks quality. Martinelli, Odegaard. Okay, you can argue Odegaard had potential because he'd been at Real Madrid, and everyone looked at him, earmarked him as being a wonder kid when he was younger anyway. But the point I'm making is, like you mentioned there, do we sacrifice a year and maybe experiment with a few youngsters. Say, you know what, we're gonna trial this. We're gonna win a few games. We might lose a few games, or we're gonna take some risks. Just sort of bleed a few of these youngsters in to see how they perform, and see what happens. It's a gamble. I mean, it could backfire massively.
Could get relegated.
Or do we just push on, see how we get on this season? We're floating around mid-table with like 10 games left, with no realistic chance of getting in the playoffs. We then go, right, you know what, fuck it, let's just put the youngsters in now. Let's get a run of games and see what they can do. Or play them for the cup games maybe instead to see how they cope.
Definitely.
The League Cup maybe perhaps. But exciting times, isn't it? And I love the fact that we kind of dedicated this show to the under-21s without talking too heavily on the first team, because I think rightly so. I think these youngsters deserve the platform. They deserve for you and I and all the Mill fans to be talking about them at the moment and really beefing them up, because I think what they've done this season, not just yesterday, but the whole season, I think it's been truly remarkable. And it's been, obviously I'm very, very proud of them. It's a real credit to them what they've done,
Definitely. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is I had a great time yesterday watching them play. And it's unfortunate that they play at 1 o'clock on Mondays and at the training ground and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a logistical reason for that. Probably because if you're playing Sheffield United, you don't, if you're not going to get many fans there, why don't you just get Sheffield United down early so they can get home early and stuff like that. But I couldn't help but thinking when I was watching that, and I said the same thing last week when we won against Hull, please can you make sure it's at a sociable time, because I'm at work, I don't want to miss work, and it's like it's like I really, or even if the club could stream it and do a bit more for that in a sense, because I think this is, you're right, like the exposure that we had yesterday to watch them play was brilliant, and I think that's the only thing I'd take from that, because I think it was a great experience for them, but also a great experience for us to be there, see these players coming through and get really excited about the future in a sense, and it's a real spotlight on them. So I just wish there's more that the club can do next season for that, to amplify that spotlight on them, and hopefully they do that. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I mean, maybe the club saw the reaction from the fans. I mean, I said we're very vocal, that we're very supportive. There's 2,000 turned up, so hopefully that shows that we are behind the youth. We are behind the under-21s, and maybe that gives them a little bit of a sort of tip really to give them a bit more exposure, because commercially it might do good for the club as well, to get more fans paying in to watch them. Even they are charging a £5 a game, which I thought was pretty good yesterday. It's great. It's an opportunity to watch some games, and I'm looking forward to next season. I'll be interested to see how these guys fit in, if they do, into the first team.
Definitely, absolutely agree with you. I think we're going to call it there, mate. I think
sounds good.
So thank you for joining me, mate, as always, and nice to be back.
Actually, for having us on, mate, and obviously look forward to doing some more of these kind of shows going forward. Obviously, it's difficult now with the season over, not much else to sort of talk about really. There's no discussion of the sort of transfers just yet. So it's great that we had this opportunity to discuss the under-21s and give them the credit they deserve.
Absolutely. So thanks for sharing, guys. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe, like the video on YouTube if you're listening or watching on there, and be sure to follow us on socials at That Mill Pod. And that's it from us. See you again soon.